Hi, my name is George Davis, and on behalf of the BIMI Board of Directors, I welcome you to our first evening Tuesday talk of the summer featuring Dr. Ben Hruska. We're so thrilled to have him. And I've got to say, I'm just very happy. I'm not really a good joke teller, but I was really afraid that I'd have to welcome you to the BIMI sauna this afternoon. It was miserable. Thankfully, it's just a little bit warm in here. At any rate, first a little housekeeping. Hopefully, all of you know that the drawing for Lobster Mania is not going to happen tonight. It's been delayed to next Tuesday, unfortunately. We had some terrible trouble with our PayPal on the website. So I encourage you to try again. I'm told that it's working now. So please buy some Lobster Mania tickets and also consider donating if you support BIMI and its mission. Our nonprofit mission is education, and I'm paraphrasing, excuse me, Doug, our president, is not going to read it. Education that inspires appreciation and conservation of our saltwater environment. And tonight, I think you'll be inspired by Dr. Ben Hruska. I always am. Because, in my view, the work he's done at the Block Island Historical Society is nothing short of an island treasure. And so we are presenting this tonight in cooperation with Historical Society. And we'd also like to thank Deadeye Dix, who provides our speaker with a wonderful pre-talk meal. And I hone in on that every Tuesday. Maybe that's why I still am willing to get speakers. I don't know. Oh, one thing I'd like to say before Ben starts is hold your questions to the end, because we often have to repeat them so everyone can hear. So it'll work much better that way. And now, to talk to us about the Roaring Twenties and Block Island, land, sea, and air, Dr. Ben Hruska.
Thanks everybody for showing. Can you hear me in the back? We good? Okay. This is the image that started this summer's exhibition. I was kind of intrigued about the 1920s, saw this image, and that really kind of sparked my interest in terms of what was going on Block Island in the 1920s. So 1928, you had a state convention here of Legionnaires. World War I ends in 1918. So these veterans are probably, 30, 32. And this is a state convention. The state meeting for Rhode Island is on Block Island. I thought that is a pretty cool picture. A few weeks later, I found a fantastic program from this, again, 1928 event. Lasted 3 days. And it's great because it's pretty much a snapshot of Block Island's business history. If it was a business on Block Island, it purchased space. So we have the Finn Milliken's, barbershop. I'll go through these fairly fast, but some of these are pretty cool. The idea that there's plumbing and heating now. So the idea that people are getting water in their house. So just the layer of history, the idea of maybe somebody had a cottage, they've lived there for 200 years, the family, and they say, okay, it's 1920s, we're getting electricity, and we're moving toward getting running water inside the house. Ballards, 1928. The Music Weavers of Worcester, the group there. You'll notice they're not advertising any alcohol in this because this is 1928. That's the one thing. Everything is sponsoring except speakeasies. Bellevue Coffee Shop. May look very, very simple, but we got a telephone. So that is one of the earliest instances I've seen that there is a telephone on Block Island. We're still investigating. I don't know, when the switchboard came in, Edie Blaine gave me some great interviews last winter, luckily, on what it was like to work at the switchboard station. Blue Dory. So some of these are still there. That's what was kind of fun, is that you're thumbing through this and going, this looks like a issue of the Block Island Times. Some of these businesses are still here. I want to thank the Hall family. The Hall family allowed me to see this image, and this really kind of sparked my interest in rum running on Block Island. Say what you will about Al Capone and his motivational techniques, but at least Al Capone would move booze in the dead of night or, in behind closed doors. This is tourists watching people rum run. I mean, think about that. So not only are they taking the picture, after the fact, someone says, I can make money by turning this into a postcard that I'm going to sell retroactively on Block Island. So this is a fascinating topic. I'm going to touch on it a little bit. This Thursday at the Historical Society, I'll be doing a talk specifically about Prohibition. This is a very complicated subject. You're talking 13 years of history. You got to factor in women are voting now. You got to factor in immigration. One of the big groups behind Prohibition was the KKK. There's 2 states that did not ratify the 18th Amendment, which is Rhode Island, 76% Catholic, Connecticut. So from the very beginning, 46 states are on board. Rhode Island, I don't think Rhode Island even voted on it. Like, they're not even talking about it. We have a little bit of smuggling history in this state. I mean, we're 38 miles wide and we got 400 miles of coastline. So this is a smuggler's paradise. However, I got to warn you about an illness that's going around there that I think I am suffering from. Localitis. So this is a term that I'm currently developing with another professor of mine. Localitis, this is our definition right now. The assumption that something that happened here never happened anywhere else. I may have this because I've looked online. I'm not seeing any other location in the United States that's making a postcard that you can run during the day. But one advantage of avoiding localitis, and I think hopefully that you've enjoyed in my articles, is that it allows more meanwhiles. So as opposed to just saying Dodge City, Kansas, my hometown, or Block Island is the best thing since sliced bread, you are taking a step back and talking about, okay, from what's going on Block Island or your small town, wherever, can you talk about women getting the right to vote? Can you talk about refrigeration? Can you talk about other larger trends that are bigger than just your particular place? So taking that lesson, we're looking for meanwhiles. We're looking for something bigger than just Block Island. One meanwhile, of course, is going to be Prohibition, 1920 to 1933. It's estimated, I just learned this week, that New York City had 32,000 speakeasies at any given time. So when you go to New York City and they brag that this place was a speakeasy, you can pretty much say, well, it wasn't a speakeasy. I mean, because these places are opening, closing down, moving across the street. New York and Maryland didn't even pretend to enforce it. They told the federal government, if you want to do it, that's fantastic. So New York was wide open. Rhode Island was also very, very much wide open. Here we have 20,000 women marching in 1915 for the right to vote. So you have this idea of women's positions is changing in the United States and how that plans out. The other one is the golden age of advertising. So 1925, the first radio station opens. Grand Ole Opry opens up in 1925, starts their show. And I think for me, as a digital immigrant, I'm a digital immigrant, by the way. Digital immigrant is someone who's got a college degree without an email address. Say that at the Block Island school to someone who's about 10, and they kind of look at you like, you don't look like you're 90. But the idea of, I think I underestimated the power of the radio. In 1925, you could be in Oklahoma, you could be on Block Island, you could be in Chicago, and if you had a radio, you could hear someone playing an instrument in Tennessee. That's pretty incredible when you think about it. So, I mean, I think my focus has always kind of been, oh, the internet's where things change, or television is where things change, and not realize that, these companies like Campbell's that have been around for decades have got to come up with jingles. That just doesn't happen. So, meanwhile, let's test our theory out. A lot of people look toward Rebecca. We all know the story of Rebecca. She is part of our exhibit this year, put up in 1898. I think what a lot of people don't realize is that she was there for almost 25 years before Prohibition took off. So this is a long, long fight that women, specifically women, but also men, Anti-Saloon League, are waging. I mean, it's about 100 years to get this in the Constitution. The red is what I want to talk about. The red circles are what? What do you think? For water. Okay. So again, it's 1898. You're an American woman on Block Island. You're not a full citizen because you can't vote. But can you be politically active? Yes. You are physically taking on one of the biggest challenges, or the biggest arguments for alcohol, is that, when the Puritans landed in 1620, they had more beer and wine than water. Water will kill you if it's not treated, obviously. So beer, is going to be a lot safer to drink. What WTCU is taking that challenge and saying, here is fresh water to drink for dogs, cats, humans, and horses. But the meanwhile would be this. I mean, this is not Block Island. You probably know that. This is the headquarters of the WTCU. 250,000 volunteers nationwide. I mean, that is an amazing, amazing political movement. This is their building in Chicago. 1890, it cost $1.2 million to build. So, and they had donations of $100 coming in from Block Island and every place else to actually build this. So again, meanwhile, this idea of, we look at this picture here and see larger themes beyond Block Island. Next, we have advertising. What's really taken off is refrigeration. That's the big thing that's going on here. You got Hood's ice cream there. That would be essentially like us seeing a Starbucks sign today. I mean, Hood's is a national chain. They're all over the place. They're all over the country. And how much, excuse me, going the right way here. How much American eating trends have changed is that by 1935, this picture was taken in a little town called Pie Town, New Mexico. Anybody been to Pie Town? Me and my dad went once. So you're out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, middle of nowhere. And they estimated that this was the furthest you could be from refrigerated ice cream in 1935, 40 miles. Now, I don't know whether that's fact or fiction, but I thought that was a pretty cool picture. This idea of what's happening in that picture. It could be Block Island. It could be Chicago. It could be, something that your grandparents or great-grandparents experienced. Americans collectively are having the same experience with ice cream. And ice cream is going to be a big takeoff. Another big thing that's going to take off during Prohibition is soda. Why do you think soda, the consumption of Coca-Cola and soda, is going up during Prohibition? We need an alternative, right? The second big thing is they're drinking stuff that's like industrial grade alcohol. So the booze you're getting is probably not going to be that good. So the whole cocktail culture that you have today starts in the 1920s. And then automobiles. That's the big one. Who has experienced difficult parking this week? So when this picture is taken in 1928, there are 21 million cars on the road in the United States. In 1903, when the first car came to Block Island, there were 33,000 cars. So the amount of cars is changing everything. It's particularly changing how people vacation. You're not getting on a steamer anymore with your trunk coming to Block Island for 2 or 3 months per se. You are going places for 3 or 4 days. So it opens up all of upstate New York, all the Midwest. I know we have a lot of debate right now on, TikTok and social media and how are these things impacting our young people or anybody really. This is Chief Justice Robert Taft. Now, he was president of the United States. This is a picture of him when he's president. He's a gentleman on the right, playing something called Hastur Pool. Anybody know what that is? Golf. After he left the presidency, he became Chief Justice of the United States. And in 1925, he wrote this to his brother about the impact of automobiles were having on American society. Quote, "The automobile is the greatest instrument for promoting immunity of crimes of violence in the history of civilization." So human beings, unfortunately, have been hurting other human beings since the beginning of time, but it isn't until you have a car that you have an instrument or a tool that will allow you to get away from a crime scene that's faster than a horse. So that's going to have a big, big impact. I know we're here to see some Block Island pictures. I love this shot. You need a cooler. You just, grab a basket and throw ice in it and throw your booze in there. That's Old Harbor, of course. This one I like here. So sitting on a gas tank. I was just thinking, when did rules? I mean, who's all seen the one wheel things that blow through Bridgegate Square that apparently have no rule, the scooters, like they apparently have there's no rhyme or reason. That's what cars were when they first came out. In 1930, there were 48 states, only 24 had a driver's license, meaning there's zero regulation in 24 states. You got a car, just drive it. Nothing about design either, but this would be Mitchell shop. This would have been on, I believe, Chapel Street. Prohibition history, it really hinges on one event. Prohibition history on Block Island, and that is in 1925. Before 1925, from what I'm seeing, it looked like the bars were open. There are no speakeasies. You don't have to have speakeasies because Rhode Island's always kind of done whatever it wants. Block Island's always kind of done whatever it wants. You're the governor of Rhode Island. You got mission impossible. The legislature won't even vote on the ratification. So how do you think how do you think they feel about funding to fight rum running? So in 1925, the state police is formed, and this is bigger than just Block Island. I mean, if you're the governor, you're dealing with problems in Woonsocket and Narragansett and in all these other towns, is that everybody knows the police officers. They probably went to school with them. So it's very easy to maybe look the other way. 1925, you get to a point where we'll talk a little bit tonight about the Red Top Inn. So the Red Top Inn, I'm still investigating this. Where Beach Avenue meets Corn Neck Road, roughly where Pam Gasner's house is at, that's where it sounds like the Red Top Inn was at. What the Red Top Inn was a speakeasy, or a bar that someone from the mainland decided to open on Block Island in 1924. You can imagine how that went over. So the patrons from the Yellow Kittens went and burned the bar down. That's making the newspaper. So the governor's got to do something. I mean, so from what I understand, the first raid on Block Island was the Yellow Kittens raiding another bar for competition. Not the state police, not the FBI, none of that stuff. About this raid, I'll just leave you these three quotes. Then we can circle back if we have time. So this is Providence Journal. Everyone's reading this across the state. Quote, "It begins to appear that Block Island is coming back into the Union." Again, and when this was written, I mean, you had guys that were, 70 or 80 years old that fought in the war. So that's kind of interesting. Second quote from the article. "The Rhode Island state trooper clothed with authority stands over guard over the Yellow Kittens and in effect over all New Shoreham." Rhode Island Mounted Police, that's a state police, yesterday captured Block Island and made it for the first time since the enactment of the 18th Amendment part of the United States. So from that subtle hint, this was a pretty wild place. We're going to do two narratives today. We'll talk a little bit about the Red Top Inn, which I just told you about. Primarily, I want to talk about the Great Salt Pond and my article this week, looking at the Great Salt Pond as a place of experimentation. So submariners who are stuck underneath the ocean don't have to die in large numbers. That's just what was happening in the 1920s, and not just the United States Navy. We just did not have the technology. If a submarine was injured or somehow indisposed and on the bottom of the ocean, it had to be very frustrating to know there were sailors down there and you just couldn't get at them in time. So we're going to be talking about kind of three things here. I've kind of color coded them. So I'll work backwards. In 1928, that's the green here. In 1928, the U.S. Navy comes to the Great Salt Pond and they do a series of tests for the McCann Rescue Chamber. So again, this is a chamber that can descend, go down to a submerged submarine that's damaged, and pull men off over time. The triangle is going to be a submarine crash in 1927 that I'll talk about. And then 2 years before that, we have one right off Block Island, and that is the U-51, excuse me, the S-51. So two submarines sink. One's off Block Island, 1925. That's the blue. The second one is off Provincetown, 1927. Then that submarine that sank, the S-4, is turned into a testing platform. And then a year later, they came to the Great Salt Pond to sink the S-4 and then to test this procedure of getting men who are confined down there. Here's the S-51. So the S-51 is cruising off of Block Island, 1925, runs into a passenger ship. This is not supposed to happen. They have steps in place to make sure this doesn't happen, but it does. It runs into a huge passenger ship, and only 3 men survive. This is a picture off of Block Island. This, again, the radio stations just started in 1925. So this would have been one of the first national tragedies that Americans are hearing on the radio. So Americans, for the first time, wherever they're in Minnesota, Oklahoma, wherever, are hearing about this place called Block Island, because that is the point of reference for this submarine disaster that cost 36 lives. So the S-51 sinks off Block Island. Only 3 guys survive. 36 pass away. After a few months, it's just so complicated even to get the submarine back. This is the submarine that sank off Block Island being towed into Brooklyn Harbor. So they had to come up with this whole system of, okay, we can have these pontoons, we'll drain the water, we'll lower them into the water, we'll attach them. What's the most efficient way to attach them to a downed submarine, and then put air in those and lift that up. So that practicing all these things. Here are the 3 survivors from the S-51. And this was total luck. They happened to be right at the conning tower when the collision happened. So they were able to get to the surface right away. 36 of their fellow shipmates passed away. Again, 15 miles off Block Island. So that's September 1925. Now we're moving to the triangle. This is connected to Prohibition because the U.S. Navy is doing test runs out there with their submarine, testing submarines. There's also an organization out there called the Coast Guard. And what do you think the Coast Guard are doing? Looking for rum runners. And that's gonna cost 40 lives. So the S-4 is sailing, doing a training mission, going back into Boston. They are off of Provincetown, doing a mile submerged run. And unknown to them, a Coast Guard cutter is leaving the harbor to go look for rum runners, and they run into each other. So what happens is you've got this submarine down at the bottom. You can see it from the wharf at Provincetown, at least in terms of where they are, except they're 125 feet below. And there's simply nothing they can do. 40 men die. And sadly, most of them died from asphyxiation. Salt water was leaking into the batteries, released chlorine. So in 1927, this idea of we're just going to have a little pod and it's going to go down and grab guys. I mean, this is really science fiction. This is the official Navy artist rendition of what they wanted. I mean, it really looks like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. But the idea of we need a little capsule that can go down, attach itself to a wounded submarine, and bring up individuals over time. So this is 1927. We need an answer. This is Jules Verne, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, in 1869. And it's pretty much kind of the same thing. I mean, technology really hasn't evolved that much underwater by 1925. This is what contemporary people who read 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I'm curious, who's actually read 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea? It's more than I thought. That's good. I have not. So the red triangle, again, the S4 sinks off Providencetown over a course of a couple weeks. The taps just stop. They eventually recover all the bodies, and they decide we're not going to let this happen again. So the S4 is transformed into a testing platform, and they need a place to test in the open ocean that's a little bit safer. So where do they go? The Great Salt Pond. So this is the McCain Rescue Chamber. So in December of 1928, exactly a year after the S4 sinks, they come to Block Island for some testing steps, and they perfect the whole maneuver of getting people who are in a submerged U-boat off the bottom of the Great Salt Pond. That, in learning, you call that scaffolding. You do it at 60 feet, and then you can figure out, okay, can we do it in the open ocean at 120 feet? This becomes very important because within almost a decade, 40 lives will be saved by the McCann Rescue Chamber. That, again, the prototypes were developed here on Block Island. Also during this time, Amelia Earhart's coming to Block Island. So 1927, 1928, we had the submarines I talked about going on. 1928, they're testing the McCann Rescue Chamber in the Great Salt Pond. Simon Lake, who is a submarine proponent, needs a little good PR. So they're going to be doing some testing off Block Island, and who better than Amelia Earhart? So she comes to Block Island. She is, by far the most famous woman in the world. I think it's really hard to overstate how famous she was. I think I looked it up this year. Earlier this year, Taylor Swift. Where are my Swifties? Okay, got bad news for you. Taylor Swift had 3 concerts in a row this year of 96,000 people. So they had 96,000 day 1, day 2, day 3. That's 288,000 Swifties to see Taylor Swift. How popular was this woman? Boston, 1928, 300,000 people show up to see a parade. That's how famous this woman was. And the next year she comes to Block Island. Young Sam Mott. Sam Mott would have been, again, the gentleman who owned the Narragansett. And the Spring House eventually gives her a cruise around the island. She goes sword fishing with Harry Smith. And then she does a test run, dives at the bottom of the Great Salt Pond. I want to thank George Mott. George Mott is the son of Sam. He gave me this great copy of the ledger that she signed. So again, arguably the most famous person on earth, at least the United States for sure, is across the street, signs her own name. So I wanted to thank George for that. Another shout out to Sue Ann Milliken. And I need a little help here. I got too many ideas for stories. So you guys are going to vote on my next story. The voting involves these 3 pictures. All 3 of these pictures came from Sue Ann Milliken. Sue Ann Milliken has about 100 images that were all taken by Fred Benson. So the 3 images that you see right here, I'll go through them individually, were taken by Fred Benson. I have a rough idea of some of the background, but you're going to vote on which one that you want to hear about. So that's Block Island. Anybody remember this? 1972 or three. I've seen references to this in the Byron newsletter. I've seen references into the Block Island Times, but this is the only picture that I've seen. And this is, I had to apologize. This is like me with a cell phone and like a shoebox. These are going to be professionally done, but it was the only way I could really capture the image. I think 400 was the cars they took off. Number 400 cars they took off Block Island. They crushed and took off. So that's your first one. Second thing you can vote for is a Boy Scout invasion. I'm guessing 1961, 1962. That's your second option. And your third option is this. Any ideas what that is? It's a little, I didn't quite believe it's a sewer system. That is a very controversial topic. I know it's going to stun you to say that there's controversial things on Block Island, but there used to be a time where there were very controversial things on Block Island. This is a $4 million piece of $4 million project in 1972. I mean, that's when $4 million could do something. But there were a substantial part of the island that did not want it. Anybody wager a guess why? The idea that all the hotels and all the should be on septic systems, whether it's a hotel or a business. Any ideas? Increasing number of people. We were just talking about this at dinner. You know, I lived in Phoenix. They build the 101 4-lane highway, traffic jam. So they build the 202. That's 6 lanes. Guess what that turns into? Traffic jam. Then they build the 303. That's 8 lanes wide. That's traffic jam. So yeah, there was concern that maybe this is going to allow too many people to come over. If we have a functioning sewer system like this, would a Holiday Inn come in or something along those lines? So that's pretty interesting. So who wants this? Show of hands. Right. Who wants this? Is that the Swifty? 2, 3. Who wants this? All right. I think we have a winner. I watched the fireworks at the that's the Ocean View in the background, just to give you some context. So that's the Ocean View Foundation in the background there. So when I watched the fireworks up there in July, I poked my head over and I'm going, yeah, that has to be it. I mean, it's either that or the airport. But it's going to be a fun article. So the saga of the Red Top Inn. Again, thanks again to the Hall family. You know, I'm really getting a sense that you had pretty much before 1925, the bars are open. There are no speakeasies on Block Island. After 1925, after the state police raid the Yellow Kittens, at least we have to pretend that we don't have functioning bars. But I am seeing circumstantial evidence of speakeasies. There's a little sign on top that says "Tumble In." Now, maybe that's a chicken coop. I don't know. But a pretty cool name. So we got 2 pictures of the Tumble In. Sanborn maps. Sanborn were insurance companies. These are, if you're a historian, you love this because it says who owns the building. So this is Water Street and Main Street. What would we call that today? Dodge Street. So I don't want to anger any Dodges, but at some point there was a hostile takeover, and Dodge Street was confiscated by the Dodge clan. I'm circling a building there that is no longer there, but it's where my mother currently works, Marie Kelly, and the cheese shop. That was a hardware store. Talking to Carrie Todd. Carrie Todd owns the Redbird. She bought the business. Her and her husband bought the business from Mac Todd. And the story goes that the T-shirt says Redbird since before Prohibition. This is why. So this is no longer there. This is right next to the Darius. There would have been a hardware store, quote unquote, and then they had plenty of paint thinner below the counter. Talking to Molly O'Neill. Is Molly here? It sounds like you were sneezing and you thought this building might fall over. I mean, it was leaning to the east here. Those boards are holding the wall up. Migrating one building over. Buy from day to day. Who's seen that sign? So that is named after this gentleman, Brainerd Day. So he is, I think he lives until the 1970s. Remember, this is his picture when they started the fire department in 1925. But that's where that saying comes from. So buy from day to day. The Mohegan Tap was a speakeasy. Built in 1920. I mean, it makes sense. And there are others, which I'll go into a little bit more detail on Thursday. Here is the state police on the mainland. This is not Block Island. Interesting enough, they did not use the horses. The taxpayers of Rhode Island paid feed for 2 years. They trained with them, but they never used them. And Thursday, I'll be doing a talk, pretty much really honing in on the Yellow Kittens raid and a number of other speakeasies this Thursday at 7 p.m. at the Historical Society. So maybe we can turn it into questions. That makes sense? Yep. Thank you so much. Questions? I answered everything? You had to put me in a spot. This is the Historical Society. That's called Bridgegate Square. I don't know. I'll be honest with you. That's a very good question. Someone always asked me who Rodman's Hollow, who the Rodmans were. I haven't tracked that down either. But that is Gladys Stedman, who ran the Historical Society for a long, long, long time. Any other questions, concerns? Yes. Yep. 1965 is my understanding. The winter of 64 to 65. They dredged the harbor. They took that dredge and they filled in like in front of the parking lot. Yeah. 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 So yeah, that's a good point. That parking lot really changed things. Parking is not sexy. Okay, as a historian, but when you really think about it, the amount I looked it up, Des Moines, Iowa has as much parking at lot stores as Block Island. So think of that. 6,000 acres on Block Island that we love, we cherish. And you go to Des Moines, Iowa, which is not that big of a town. I mean, it's big, but it's not like St. Louis. And you add up all the box store parking in Des Moines, 6,000 acres. So for land use, it's pretty interesting. Anybody else? Yes. She asked about Amelia Earhart if she flew out here. She flew commercially, ironically. She was passenger, so she did fly out here, but she was a passenger on a ship that landed, or excuse me, a seaplane that landed and took off on the Great Salt Pond. So again, imagine the summer today, and you're going to land a plane on that. I mean, George, imagine February and you're going to land a plane on that. There was a lot of boats there this winter. I was surprised. Anybody else? George. Are you trying to get me voted off the island? Because there's certain families that said, oh, there wasn't that big a deal. Not that many people were doing it out here. And guess who I saw got arrested with arrest reports? That family. The Hall family, I got to give a huge shout out to. The Hall family, admitted that, how do you survive the Great Depression selling codfish? You don't. Okay, that's the short of it. I'd say the most famous would probably be Winfield Dodge. So that's the gentleman who Winfield is named after. He ran the Yellow Kittens, supposedly boozed up his customers and talked them into going down the street and setting a building on fire. But I'm currently still investigating that. Still investigating it. So, any other questions? The Red Top Inn, evidence is saying that it is by Beach Avenue and Corn Neck Road. We're still accepting tips, by the way. I thought we may have a few more leads, but any leads that you have on who or may not have been running, let us know. Yes. I have a question for you. Do you want them to be? Very well. I mean, certainly could be. Oh, so the question was, some kids in her neighborhood are finding, was it bottles or bits of bottles? Finding bottles underneath a wall. I would say it probably was used at rum running. I mean, now we're used to just being in a society where you use 5 paper coffee cups and you just throw it away. You don't even think about it, Glass was pretty precious back then, I think. So I mean, they would have been using everything, especially after the Depression. So who knows? I mean, very, very well could have been. I'm hearing all kinds of different stories that eventually will go into some sort of book after I can safely write the book. There's a the white shed across the street from the hardware store. You know what I'm talking about? Across the street from the hardware store, there's a little shed that good enough for one car. I've heard a story this year that in the 1970s, someone may or may not have been intoxicated, ran into that. And what do you think they found underneath it? Stashes of whiskey. People are storing whiskey over here like, squirrels with a nut, and then somebody burns your building down, and it turns up. So it's pretty cool. Yes. Block Island was at the very, very end of what they call Rum Row. And that went from basically New York City to Block Island. When Prohibition started in 1920, the United States ended 3 miles out. So you could legally have a tanker full of whiskey and be 4 miles off Narragansett and just park there. And there's nothing they could do. You were not breaking any laws. Now, if George grabs a little motorboat and comes visits me, and I sell him some product, and then he takes it back to Narragansett, then he's committing a crime. But here's the problem, is that early on, 1921, someone gets caught south of Block Island, 1.5 miles. His attorney makes the argument he was not within 3 miles of the United States. Because again, if you go 3 miles north of the North Light, you're going to hit open ocean. You go 3 miles, south of Matunuck, there's going to be open ocean. So the lawyer's premise was, yes, my client had whiskey off Block Island, but Block Island is not legally part of the United States. The judge did not buy that. Okay. But then it changes to 7 miles, and then it changes to 12 miles. But it's a fascinating subject. It really, really is. I mean, Bermuda just takes off. The amount of Canadian whiskey coming down. I never thought about the amount of Canadian whiskey that can be moved over the Great Lakes in the winter, because you could just drive over Lake Erie. So, anybody else? Is there a hand? No, someone's up there. So Thursday, at the Historical Society, I'll be going a little bit more in depth on speakeasies. I'll be talking about the Spartan. I'll be talking a little bit more about the Red Top Inn. I have no pictures of the Red Top Inn. It's an interesting business history because these people there's no license. They're not paying taxes. If you're a rum runner, you're not going on LinkedIn and leaving a paper trail. So it's kind of fun though. Great. That it. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ben. That was great. I'd love to hear some more about the rum runners sometime. Anyway, thank you all for coming tonight. Please consider supporting Bimmy with your donations. And we all hope to see you here next Tuesday when we're going to be featuring Kate Masery, who's talking about seafood that you don't normally eat, but you ought to eat because it's good for the ecosystem, things that we often don't find in the store. We're going to be preparing some of that too. So come learn and taste next week.